The ship called the Horizon moved slowly through the endless dark of space. Inside, Captain Park stood at the main window and watched the stars pass by. His heart beat fast, but his face showed nothing. Today, humanity would meet the galaxy for the first time. "Captain, we are approaching Nexus Prime," said the pilot. "They have given us permission to land." Park nodded. He turned to look at his crew, 20 men and women all chosen carefully for this mission. Among them was Doctor, a woman with sharp eyes and a gentle smile. She studied languages and cultures. Her job was to watch, listen, and learn everything about these alien species. "Remember," Park said to his crew, "we are guests here. We speak only when spoken to. We show respect. We do not argue. We do not boast." Some of the younger officers looked confused. One of them, a tall man named, raised his hand. "Captain, should we not show them our strength, our achievements? We have come so far to reach the stars." Park smiled softly. "A tree does not need to tell the forest it is tall. Let them see what they want to see. Let them think what they want to think. Our time will come." The ship landed on Nexus Prime, the great station that served as the capital of the Galactic Assembly. As the doors opened, Park took his first breath of alien air. It smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. A group of aliens waited for them. The first species Park saw were they looked like giant insects, with 6 legs and large black eyes. Their bodies made clicking sounds when they moved. Behind them stood the beings that looked like they were made of flowing water held in a shape that was almost human. And finally, there were the tall creatures whose bodies seemed to be made of living crystal. Light moved inside them like slow fire. The leader stepped forward. His name was and he was the high coordinator of his people. He looked at the humans the way a person might look at small animals. "So," said, his voice sharp and cold, "these are the new ones, the humans." He walked around Park slowly, studying him. "Small, soft, no natural weapons, no armor. How did you survive on your world?" Park bowed his head respectfully. "We learned to work together, High Coordinator. We are not strong alone, but together we have done much." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Together, yes. The weak always gather in groups. It is the way of prey animals." The representative, a flowing figure named Endless Current, moved closer. "Tell us, human, what great things has your species achieved? What do you offer the galaxy?" This was the moment. Park knew that every species before them had used this chance to boast, to show off their technology, their weapons, their conquests. He felt Doctor's eyes on him, and he remembered their plan. "We have achieved very little compared to your ancient civilizations," Park said, his voice humble. "We have only just learned to travel between stars. We have no great empire, no powerful weapons. We come here not to show you what we are, but to learn from you. We wish only to listen." Silence filled the landing bay. The aliens looked at each other, confusion in their strange eyes. The representative, an ancient being named, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "You do not wish to speak of your achievements. You do not wish to claim territory or demand recognition." "We wish only for peace," Park said, "and perhaps in time friendship." Later, the human delegation was taken to small rooms far from the center of the station. The rooms were simple and cold, meant for species of little importance. Doctor sat with Park and shared what she had observed. "They see us as nothing," she said, her voice quiet but not sad. "The barely looked at us after your speech, only the seemed interested." "Good," Park said, "let them ignore us. While they look away, we will watch, we will learn. Tell me what you saw." Doctor opened her notebook. "The work together, but there is tension between them. They fight for power within the council. They are old and tired of conflict. There are 9 other species in the assembly, but those 3 hold the most power." "And how did they gain this power?" "Fear," she said simply. "They have the largest military. They control most of the trade routes. They have knowledge and history. Together they have ruled for thousands of years." Park nodded slowly. "And what do they fear?" Doctor smiled. Change. They fear anything that might upset their control. That is why they dismiss us. We are too small to be a threat, so we are not worth their attention. 2 days later, the council held a formal meeting to decide humanity's status. The human delegation was allowed to stand at the back of the Great Hall and watch. Park stood straight and silent as the alien leaders discussed his people's fate. The humans are clearly a young and primitive species, announced. I propose we classify them as a dependent species. They will be given a small territory and no voting rights, for their own protection, of course. Endless Current made a flowing motion that seemed like agreement. They have no ships worth mentioning, no technology we need, no resources we want. Let them stay in their little corner of space. They will never be important. Only the old seemed uncertain. Perhaps we should take more time to understand them. They are different from other young species. They did not boast or threaten. This is unusual. A made his clicking laugh again. Different, they are weak. Silence is the language of those who have nothing to say. Let us vote. The vote was quick. 12 species and 10 voted to make humanity a dependent species. Only the voted against, and one small species called the chose not to vote at all. Park accepted the decision with a bow. He thanked the council for their wisdom. He asked for nothing. He complained about nothing. As the human delegation prepared to leave Nexus Prime, approached Park privately. The old looked at the human captain with curiosity. You are not angry, observed. Your people have been insulted, you have been given nothing, yet you smile. Park looked up at the ancient crystal being. We came to learn, he said, and we have learned much. Thank you for your kindness, speaker. When the horizon returned to Earth, Admiral was waiting at the landing pad. He was an old soldier with gray hair and eyes that had seen many battles. He read the delegation's report in silence while Park and Doctor stood before him. So, Admiral said when he finished, they think we are weak. They have put us in a cage and told us to be grateful. Yes, Admiral, Park said. Admiral set down the report and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who played a very long game. They have made their first mistake, he said quietly. They have underestimated patience. Doctor, I want you to build an intelligence network. Learn everything about these species, their secrets, their fears, their weaknesses. Yes, Admiral. Captain Park, you will help me build a fleet, quietly, slowly, ships they will never see coming. Park nodded. How long do we wait, Admiral? Admiral looked out the window at Earth, blue and beautiful in the light of the sun. As long as it takes, we have time, and one day they will understand what human patience really means. The stars held many secrets, and humanity had just begun to learn them. The council had looked at the quiet humans and seen nothing worth fearing. They would remember this mistake for a very long time. 50 years passed like water flowing through fingers. The galaxy turned and changed. Empires rose and fell, and the great species of the council continued their endless games of power. Through it all, humanity stayed quiet. They built their colonies on the edges of known space. They traded in small markets. They asked for nothing and complained about nothing. And slowly, very slowly, the galaxy forgot to watch them. President Shin sat in her office in New Seoul, the capital city of Earth's government. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. On her desk sat reports from 17 human colony worlds. 30 billion human beings now lived among the stars, but the official records sent to the assembly showed only 4 billion. Director, she said to the man standing before her, tell me about the... Director was the head of the Office of Galactic Intelligence. He was a thin man with a forgettable face, which was useful in his line of work. For 30 years, he had been building a network of spies and informants throughout the galaxy. They are mining the Amber Nebula, he said, placing a data pad on her desk. They have been doing this for 15 years. The nebula is protected by assembly law. If the other species knew about this, they would lose their council seat. President Shin smiled slightly. And they do not know we know. No, Madam President. Our agents are very careful. We watch, we record, we wait. Good, what about the... Director pulled up another file. The controls 60% of all trade routes in the galaxy, but our analysts have discovered something interesting. They have been changing prices secretly for centuries. They charge some species more than others. 7 species in the assembly have lost trillions in resources because of this cheating. Do these species know? Not yet, but we have all the evidence. Every transaction, every lie. When the time comes, we can destroy this reputation with a single message. President Shin nodded and stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. New Seoul was beautiful, with tall buildings that touched the clouds and parks full of green trees. Humans had built this in just 50 years, but the galaxy still saw them as primitive, as weak. And our military, she asked. Admiral's legacy continues, Director said. There was respect in his voice. The old admiral had died 10 years ago, but his plans lived on. We have 400 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels. Our technology now equals or exceeds anything in the assembly. The Ghost Drive. Fully operational. Our ships can travel faster than light without leaving any signal. We can appear anywhere without warning. The assembly does not even know this technology exists. President Shin turned back to face her intelligence director. 50 years, she said softly. 50 years of silence. Sometimes I wonder if we are being too patient. Director shook his head. Patience is our greatest weapon, Madam President. Admiral understood this. Every year we wait, we grow stronger. Every year the assembly ignores us, they grow weaker. When the time comes, we will not just win a battle, we will change the galaxy forever. Far from Earth, on the edge of human space, Commander guided her ship through the darkness between stars. Her vessel was called Ghost Orchid, and it was one of humanity's most advanced research ships. It could move through space without being seen by any sensor in the galaxy. Her crew of 40 worked in silence, gathering information about alien technology and mapping secret routes through space. Today, they had found something important. Commander, said her science officer, a young woman named I.M., I have confirmed the readings. The ships ahead are mining the Amber Nebula. This is definitely illegal. Commander looked at the screen. 20 ships floated in the golden clouds of the nebula, pulling out rare minerals that belonged to no one species. The assembly had protected this nebula thousands of years ago. Any species caught taking from it would face severe punishment. Record everything, Commander ordered. Every ship, every action, every gram of material they take. Yes, Commander, but may I ask a question? Go ahead. I.M. looked at her commander with curious eyes. Why do we not report this now? If we told the assembly, they would be punished. Would that not help humanity? Commander smiled. She was 45 years old and had served in the fleet for 20 years. She understood the long game humanity was playing. If we report this now, they would be embarrassed, she explained. They might lose some power, but they would survive, they would recover, and they would know that humanity was watching them. She turned back to the screen. But if we wait, if we gather more evidence, if we learn more secrets, then when the time comes, we can destroy them completely, not with weapons, but with truth. Back on Earth, the doctrine of measured response was taught in every military academy. President Shin had written it herself, building on the ideas of Admiral and Captain Park, who had both passed away years ago. The doctrine was simple. Humanity would never strike first. They would never start a war. But if anyone attacked them, if anyone hurt their people, they would respond with overwhelming force. They would not just defeat their enemies. They would end the conflict so completely that no one would ever think of attacking humanity again. For 50 years, this doctrine had never been tested. Humanity had no enemies because humanity had no importance. They were a small species in a small corner of space, not worth the trouble of attacking. But the galaxy was about to change. On the colony world of Nu, 3 million humans lived peaceful lives. They farmed the rich soil. They built cities by the purple oceans. They raised children who had never seen Earth but called themselves human with pride. The battle fleet arrived without warning. It was a Tuesday morning when the first explosions shook the mining outpost on the northern continent. Workers looked up at the sky and saw 5 warships descending through the clouds. Beams of energy cut through buildings like hot knives through paper. The attack lasted 12 minutes. When it ended, 2,000 humans were dead. The mining outpost was nothing but burning ruins. They claimed it was an accident. They said their ships had been doing military exercises nearby and had mistaken the mining outpost for an asteroid. They offered no apology. They paid no compensation. The assembly accepted their explanation without investigation. After all, the High Coordinator said at the council meeting, it was only a human settlement. These things happen. President Shin watched the council's response from her office. Her hands were steady, but her eyes burned with cold fire. Around her stood the leaders of humanity's military and intelligence services. "How many children?" she asked quietly. Director checked his report. His voice was heavy. 312 children died in the attack, Madam President. Silence filled the room. 312 children who would never grow up, who would never fall in love or see Earth or hold their own children someday. President Shin stood up slowly. She walked to the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, they were celebrating their successful exercise. Somewhere out there, the council was already forgetting the humans they had dismissed. "Contact all colony worlds," she said, her voice calm and clear. "Begin Protocol Sunrise, it is time." "Madam President," one of her admirals said, "are you certain? Once we begin, there is no going back." She turned to face them. There were tears in her eyes, but her voice did not shake. "We have been patient," she said. "We have been silent. We have watched our people die and said nothing. We have accepted insults and asked for nothing." She took a deep breath. 50 years ago, we came to the galaxy seeking friendship. They gave us contempt. Now we will show them what humanity really is. She walked to her desk and pressed a button. Her face appeared on screens across 17 worlds. 30 billion humans stopped what they were doing and listened. "My fellow humans," President Shin said, "today we were attacked. Today we lost sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, friends and neighbors. Today the galaxy showed us once again that they see us as nothing, as insects to be stepped on without thought or regret." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was steel. "We have been patient. We have been silent. Now we will be remembered." The quiet years were over, and the galaxy was about to learn what human patience had built. Ambassador Han walked through the great halls of Nexus Prime with her head held high. She was 53 years old, with black hair turning gray at the temples and a face that showed no fear. Behind her walked a single assistant, a young man named who carried only a small data pad. The aliens they passed looked at them with confusion. Humans rarely came to the capital station. When they did, they usually walked with their heads down, trying not to be noticed. But Ambassador Han walked like she owned the place. The council chamber was a massive room shaped like a bowl. 12 species sat in their assigned sections, arranged in a circle around a central platform. The N held the highest positions, looking down on everyone else. Ambassador Han stepped onto the central platform. Above her, the alien leaders watched with mild interest. Most of them were already bored. This was just another human complaint, another weak species asking for things they did not deserve. High Coordinator spoke first, his voice filled with impatience. "The human ambassador may speak. What does your species want now?" Ambassador Han bowed slightly, but there was no submission in her movement. It was the bow of an equal showing courtesy, not the bow of a servant showing fear. 6 months ago, she began, her voice clear and strong, a battle fleet attacked a human mining outpost on the colony world of Nu. 2,000 of my people were killed, including 312 children. We have come seeking justice. Endless Current, the representative, made a flowing motion that might have been a shrug. That matter has been settled. Our ships made a navigation error. Regrettable, but accidents happen. We owe your species nothing. We disagree, Ambassador Han said. We demand a formal apology. We demand compensation for the families of the dead. And we demand that the officers responsible be brought to justice. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then it began to laugh. It was an ugly sound, like stones grinding together. You demand, he said, you, a species we allow to exist, a species so weak that you cannot even defend a single mining outpost. He leaned forward, his black eyes glittering. Know your place, human. Be grateful we do not take the rest of your pathetic colonies. The other species began to laugh as well. The sound echoed through the great chamber, bouncing off the walls and filling every corner. Ambassador Han stood alone on the platform, surrounded by mockery. But she did not look down, she did not cry, she did not beg. She smiled. I see, she said, and her voice cut through the laughter like a blade. We came seeking justice. We accept your answer. Something in her tone made the laughter die. A's black eyes narrowed. What does that mean? He demanded. Ambassador Han looked up at him, and there was something in her eyes that made the ancient feel, for just a moment, afraid. It means, she said, that we are done asking. She nodded to her assistant, pressed a button on his data pad. Every screen in the council chamber came alive. Every display, every monitor, every communication device across Nexus Prime began showing the same images. The mining operation in the Amber Nebula. 15 years of illegal activity. Every ship identified. Every gram of stolen material documented. Every secret meeting where leaders discussed how to hide their crime. A jump to his feet, his body making clicking sounds of alarm. What is this? How do you have this? But the screens were already changing. Now they showed financial records, centuries of cheating, trillions in stolen resources, lists of every species they had deceived, proof that could not be. The council chamber exploded into chaos. Species that had been allies of the and were now screaming in anger. The representative, ancient, sat in stunned silence as the truth poured across every screen. We have been watching, Ambassador Han said, her voice somehow carrying over the noise. For 50 years we have watched and learned. We know every secret, every lie, every crime that has been hidden in the dark. She turned slowly, looking at each species in turn. You called us weak, she continued. You called us primitive. You laughed at us and ignored us and stepped on us whenever you pleased. But while you were laughing, we were learning. While you were ignoring us, we were growing. While you were stepping on us, we were preparing. The screens changed one final time. Now they showed something that made every alien in the room fall silent. Human ships, not the small trading vessels the galaxy had seen, not the simple colony transports. These were warships, massive, powerful, beautiful warships. 400 capital ships, each one the size of a small moon. 2,000 support vessels, fast and deadly. Technology that made the best weapons look like children's toys. Our fleet, Ambassador Han said, built in secret over 50 years, using technology we developed by studying every species in this room. We learned from your designs. We improved upon them. We created something new. A found his voice. This is impossible. Our sensors would have detected construction on this scale. Our spies would have reported this. Your sensors detect only what we allow them to detect, Ambassador Han replied. Our ships use something we call ghost drive. We can travel anywhere in the galaxy without being seen. We can appear in the middle of your home fleet without warning. We have been among you for decades, and you never knew." She stepped to the edge of the platform and looked directly at Endless Current. "You killed our children," she said, her voice soft but terrible. "You laughed about it afterward. You thought we would cry and beg and do nothing." She shook her head slowly. "You were wrong." The old raised his crystalline hand. Light moved inside him like a troubled sea. "Ambassador Han," he said, his voice shaking, "what do you intend to do with this power?" Ambassador Han turned to face him. Of all the aliens in the room, was the only one who had ever shown humanity any kindness. 50 years ago, he had voted against making humans a dependent species. She remembered this. "We intend to do what we have always intended," she said. "We came to the galaxy seeking peace, seeking friendship, seeking a place among the stars where we could live and grow and be treated with respect." Her voice hardened. "We were these things. We were pushed into a corner and told to be grateful for the scraps we were given." She turned back to face the full council. "Now we will take what we were, not through conquest, not through destruction, but through truth. Every secret you have kept we will reveal. Every lie you have told we will expose. Every injustice you have committed we will bring into the light." She looked at her, whose body was shaking with rage and fear. "You have a choice," she said. "You can accept responsibility for your crimes. You can apologize to the species you have wronged. You can begin building a fair and honest galaxy where every species is treated with respect." She paused. "Or you can refuse, and we will tear down everything you have built, one truth at a time." The council chamber was silent. Every eye was on the human woman standing alone on the central platform. Finally, Endless Current spoke. This voice bubbled with anger. "You dare threaten us. You think your little fleet can stand against the combined power of the Assembly." Ambassador Han smiled again. It was not a pleasant smile. "We do not need to stand against you," she said. "Look around this room. Half the species here just learned that you have been stealing from them for centuries. The other half just learned that they have been breaking sacred laws for 15 years. Who do you think they will support when the fighting starts?" She walked toward the exit, her assistant following behind. "You had 50 years to treat us as equals," she said without looking back. "You chose differently. Now live with the consequences." As she reached the door, she stopped one final time. "The fleet will arrive at space in 72 hours. You have until then to decide. Apologize and make things right, or face the truth of what you really are." She walked out into the corridor, leaving chaos behind her. Walked beside her, his face pale. "Ambassador," he whispered, "they will never apologize, they will fight." Ambassador Han nodded. "I know. They are too proud to admit they were wrong, too arrogant to accept that a species they despised has become their equal." "Then there will be war." "Yes," she said, "but it will be a short war, and when it ends, the galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again." Behind them, the council chamber still echoed with angry voices. But above the noise, one sound was clear, the sound of an old order crumbling and a new one being born. They did not apologize. Instead, they gathered their fleet and prepared for war. They told the galaxy that humanity was a dangerous threat that needed to be destroyed. They promised that the conflict would be over within weeks. They were right about one thing. It was over within weeks, but not the way they expected. Vice Admiral O stood on the bridge of the battleship Silent Thunder, watching the stars through the main display. Around him, his crew worked in calm silence. They had trained for this moment for 20 years. They were ready. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, a woman named Ara, "the fleet has entered the Crimson Reach system. 342 ships. They are heading toward our border colonies." O nodded. The fleet was impressive. Any other species would have been terrified to face such power, but humanity had something they did not expect. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Activate Ghost Drive, we go to meet them." Across human space, 200 warships disappeared from every sensor in the galaxy. They did not run away or hide. They simply stopped existing in any way that could be detected. Then, moving faster than the thought possible, they traveled through space toward the enemy fleet. The admiral, a great flowing being named Depths Without End, watched his scanners with confidence. The humans were nowhere to be seen. Perhaps they had fled in fear. Perhaps they had realized that their little fleet was no match for power. "Scan the area again," he ordered. "Find the human ships." "Admiral," his sensor officer replied, "there is nothing. No ships, no signals, no energy readings. It is as if they do not exist." Depths Without End made a bubbling sound of satisfaction. "Cowards! They talk of strength, but when faced with real power, they run. Continue toward the border. We will destroy their colonies one by one until they beg for mercy." That was when the human fleet appeared. 200 ships materialized in the middle of the formation, not on the edges, not at a safe distance, right in the center, surrounded by enemy vessels on all sides. Depths Without End stared at his display in shock. "Impossible. Our sensors should have detected them. They cannot simply appear from nowhere." But they had, and before they could react, the human ships began to fire. Lieutenant gripped the controls of her fighter and dove toward the largest ship. She was 28 years old, with quick hands and eyes that missed nothing. Behind her flew 11 other pilots, her squadron, her family. "Orchid Squadron," she said into her communicator, "follow my lead. Target the energy core on Deck 17, Section 4. "Lieutenant," one of her pilots asked, "how do we know where their energy core is?" Smiled. "Because our engineers have been studying ship designs for 50 years. They know every weakness, every flaw, every mistake they made when they built these ships." She flew her fighter through a storm of enemy fire, twisting and spinning with perfect control. The gunners could not track her. She was too fast, too unpredictable. "There," she said, spotting the target. A small section of the giant ship where the hull was slightly different. It looked like nothing important, but inside was the main power connection for the entire vessel. "Fire," she ordered. 12 human fighters released their weapons at the same moment. 12 precise shots hit the exact same spot. The dreadnought, the largest and most powerful ship in their fleet, went dark. Every light, every weapon, every engine stopped working in an instant. The great vessel began to drift, helpless and dead. Depths Without End watched in horror as ship after ship suffered the same fate. The humans were not trying to destroy his fleet through overwhelming force. They were taking it apart piece by piece, hitting weaknesses that they did not even know they had. "How?" he screamed. "How do they know where to strike?" No one could answer him. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the fleet was broken. 112 ships destroyed, 230 disabled. The rest had fled in panic. Human losses: 12 fighters, no capital ships. Vice Admiral O looked at the battlefield and felt no joy. War was never something to celebrate. It was something to end, as quickly and completely as possible. "Signal the survivors," he ordered. "Tell them they may collect their wounded and their dead. We will not fire on rescue ships." His officers looked surprised. In every war the galaxy had ever seen, the winner destroyed the loser completely. That was how power was shown. That was how enemies were made to fear you. "Admiral," Ara said carefully, "if we let them go, they might rebuild. They might attack again." O shook his head. "They will not attack again, not because we destroyed their fleet, but because we showed them mercy when we did not have to. They will remember that." He looked out at the drifting ships. Hatred breeds more hatred, fear breeds more fear, but mercy, unexpected mercy, that changes things. While the battle raged in space, something else was happening on a world deep in territory. Human special forces, moving in ships no one could detect, landed on a planet called the Garden of Depths. For 1,000 years, they had used this world as a prison for a species called the. They were small, gentle beings with large eyes and soft blue skin. Long ago, they had refused to pay tribute to the. In punishment, they had conquered their world and taken 200,000 of them as slaves. The galaxy was told that they were extinct. The truth was much worse. Commander led the rescue mission personally. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes were still sharp. She had spent 30 years learning the galaxy's secrets. Now she would use that knowledge to right an ancient wrong. "Move quietly," she told her soldiers as they approached the prison compound. "The guards do not know we are here. Let us keep it that way." They moved through the darkness like shadows. The guards never saw them coming. One by one, they fell asleep, hit by weapons that did not kill, only made them sleep for hours. Inside the prison, Commander found the. They were thin and sick, their blue skin pale from years without sunlight. When they saw the human soldiers, they cowered in fear. Commander knelt down before them and spoke softly. "We are humans. We have come to take you home." An old, his body bent with age and suffering, looked at her with confused eyes. "Humans, we have heard of your species. They said you were even weaker than us. They said you would be destroyed." Commander smiled gently. "They say many things that are not true. Come, your people are not extinct. Your world is still waiting for you, and we will make sure no one ever hurts you again." She held out her hand. After a long moment, the old took it. News of the rescue spread across the galaxy faster than any battle report. 200,000 slaves, thought dead for 1,000 years, freed by a species the Council had dismissed as worthless. These crimes were now known to everyone. 5 days after the Battle of Crimson Reach, they surrendered. Fleet Admiral Nam received their ambassador aboard her flagship. She was a small woman with white hair and a face lined with years of service. Behind her stood the commanders who had won the war, including Vice Admiral O and Lieutenant, who had been promoted for her bravery. The ambassador, a flowing figure named Tide of Sorrow, knelt before Fleet Admiral Nam. In culture, kneeling was the ultimate sign of submission. It meant admitting total defeat. "We surrender," Tide of Sorrow said, his voice heavy with shame. "We ask for mercy." Fleet Admiral Nam stepped forward. She reached down and gently helped the ambassador to his feet. "Stand up," she said. Her voice was firm but not cruel. "We have no interest in your humiliation, only your understanding." Tide of Sorrow looked at her with confusion. "You will not punish us. We killed your people, we attacked your worlds, we tried to destroy you." "Yes," Nam said, "and you failed. Now we have a choice. We can crush you completely. We can take your worlds and scatter your people. We can make you suffer the way they suffered." She shook her head. "But that is not who we are. That is not why we built our fleet and waited all those years." She looked into the alien's flowing face. "We want peace," she said. "Real peace built on honesty and respect, not the peace of the powerful standing on the weak, the peace of equals working together." Tide of Sorrow was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he bowed his head. "We do not understand your species," he said. "You had every right to destroy us, every reason to hate us, but you offer mercy instead." He looked up. "Perhaps we were wrong about you. Perhaps we were wrong about everything." Fleet Admiral Nam smiled. "Perhaps you were. Now we have a chance to start again. Let us not waste it." The treaty was signed that day. They agreed to pay for the damages they had caused. They agreed to release all their slaves. They agreed to change their trade practices so all species were treated fairly. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy began to hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. The Council watched all of this in silence. They who had supported thee were now afraid. Their own crimes had been exposed. Their own allies had abandoned them. They looked at the human fleet and knew that they could be next. But the humans did not attack them. They did not seek revenge for 50 years of insults. They simply waited. Because humanity had learned something that the Council never understood. True strength was not measured by how many enemies you destroyed. It was measured by how many enemies you turned into friends. And humanity was just getting started. 10 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. Secretary General stood at the entrance to the Great Council chamber, the same room where humanity had once been laughed at and dismissed. Today, she would walk through those doors as an equal. Today, humanity would take its rightful place among the stars. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and steady hands. Behind her walked the human delegation, including Ambassador Han, who had delivered humanity's challenge 10 years before, and young delegate who represented the new generation. "Are you ready, Madam Secretary?" asked. She was only 25, born on a colony world, raised under stars that were not Earth's sun. Smiled, "I have been waiting for this moment my entire life. We all have." The doors opened and they walked in. The chamber had changed since humanity's first visit. The rigid circles that once separated species by power were gone. Now everyone sat together, mixed and mingled. Sat next to. Former enemies spoke to each other as friends. And there, in a section that had been empty for 1,000 years, sat the 2 million of them now lived free, their population growing every year. Their world was green again, their children were healthy, and they were full members of the assembly with complete voting rights. When the human delegation entered, every being in the room stood up, not in fear, in respect. Council Speaker, the ancient who had lived through so much change, raised his crystalline hand. Light moved inside him, slow and peaceful now. "The Assembly recognizes the delegation from the United Earth Coalition," he announced. "We welcome you as full members of the Galactic Assembly, with all rights and privileges that this position grants." Walk to the central platform, the same place where Ambassador Han had stood 10 years before. But today there was no mockery, no laughter, only silence and attention. "Thank you, Speaker," she said, "and thank you to all the species gathered here today. We have traveled a long road to reach this moment." She looked around the room, seeing faces of every kind. Some had been enemies, some had been friends. Most had simply ignored humanity for decades. 60 years ago, she continued, a ship called the Horizon came to this station. Its captain was a man named Park, and when the council asked him what humanity had achieved, he said only that we had come to listen and learn. She smiled at the memory. The council thought that answer meant we were weak. They thought our silence meant we had nothing to say. They were wrong. She paused, letting her words settle. We were silent because we were patient. We were humble because we were wise. We knew that true strength is not shown through boasting or threats. True strength is shown through actions, through justice, through mercy. In the section, the survivors of the Garden of Depths listened with tears in their eyes. They remembered the human soldiers who had come for them in the darkness. They remembered the hands that had lifted them up and the voices that had promised them freedom. 10 years ago, said, we faced a choice. They had attacked us. The council had ignored our pain. We had the power to destroy our enemies completely. We could have burned their worlds and scattered their people. Some said we should. Some said it was the only way to make sure no one ever hurt us again. She shook her head. But we chose a different path. We chose mercy. We chose to help the rebuild instead of crushing them. We chose to free the slaves instead of taking them for ourselves. We chose to prove that there was another way to be powerful. In the former section, Tide of Sorrow listened in silence. He had been ambassador during the surrender. Now he was one of his people's most respected leaders, known for pushing reforms that had transformed society. That choice was not easy, admitted. Many humans were angry, many wanted revenge. They asked why we should show kindness to species that had shown us none. She looked down at her hands. then back up at the assembly. The answer is simple. We did not become strong so that we could make others weak. We became strong so that we could lift others up. We became powerful so that we could protect those who cannot protect themselves. Elder historian Minu sat in the human delegation, his old eyes watching everything. He was 93 years old now, one of the last people alive who remembered the early days. He had spent his life recording humanity's journey, and today he would see its greatest chapter. Continued. Today, I am proud to announce that the United Earth Coalition will use its position on this council to propose a new set of laws. We call them the Horizon Accords, named after that first ship that came here so many years ago. She activated a display, and text appeared in every language of the assembly. These accords will guarantee that no species will ever again be classified as dependent or inferior. Every species, no matter how small or young, will have the same rights as the oldest empires. Every voice will be heard. Every people will be respected. Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was unprecedented. The old council had always been built on power. The strong ruled and the weak served. That was the way it had always been. We also propose, said, the creation of the Galactic Relief Force. This will be a fleet dedicated not to war but to helping species in need. When disasters strike, when peoples are suffering, when the weak are threatened by the strong, this force will respond. Young delegate stepped forward to continue. Her voice was clear and confident. Humanity has been given much, she said. Strength, knowledge, the chance to shape the future of this galaxy. We believe that with such gifts come responsibilities. We will not be rulers. We will be guardians, not conquerors but builders. Council speaker raised his hand again. The ancient had watched empires rise and fall for thousands of years. He had seen cruelty and kindness, war and peace, but he had never seen anything quite like this. The assembly will vote on the Horizon Accords, he announced. All those in favor. One by one, lights appeared around the chamber, green for yes. The voted first, their lights bright with joy. Then the smaller species, the ones who had lived in fear for so long. Then slowly the larger powers, even the humbled by the exposure of their crimes, voted yes. When the count was finished, the result was unanimous. The Horizon Accords are passed, said. His crystalline body glowed with something that might have been hope. May they guide us to a better future. After the ceremony, elder historian Minu was asked to speak to a gathering of young cadets from 12 different species. They sat together in a great hall, humans and even young, all wearing the uniform of the new Galactic Relief Force. The old man stood before them, his body frail but his voice still strong. You have asked me, he said, to explain why humanity stayed silent for so long, why we did not fight back when we were insulted, why we did not show our strength when we had it. He smiled, the lines on his face deepening. The answer is simple. Words spoken in anger fade. Actions rooted in patience echo forever. He looked at the young faces before him, so full of hope and possibility. We did not come to the stars seeking enemies. We came seeking family. And family, true family, is worth waiting for. He paused, his eyes glistening with old memories. I knew Captain Park, who first represented us here. I knew Admiral, who built our fleet. I knew President Shin, who led us through our darkest hour. They are all gone now, returned to the stars from which we came. But their dream lives on. He gestured to the cadets before him. You are that dream. Human and alien, young and old, strong and weak, all working together. This is what we waited for. This is what we built for. This is what we were patient for. Outside the windows, the lights of Nexus Prime glittered against the endless dark of space. Ships from 100 worlds moved through the station, bringing traders and diplomats and families looking for new homes. Somewhere out there, on a restored world, the children were learning to sing again. Somewhere out there, They were building hospitals instead of warships. Somewhere out there, they were returning the minerals they had stolen to their rightful owners. And somewhere out there, on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, humans looked up at the sky and knew that their place among the stars was finally secure. Secretary General stood at a window, watching the lights. Young delegate joined her. Madam Secretary said, "Do you think they finally understand us, the other species?" Considered the question. "I think they are beginning to. Understanding takes time, trust takes even longer. But they respect us now." "Yes, but respect is not the goal." She turned to face the young woman. "The goal is what comes after respect, partnership, friendship, love even between peoples who once saw each other as enemies." Looked out at the stars. "Do you think we will ever get there?" Smiled. "We spent 50 years building a fleet. We spent 10 years building peace. We can spend 100 years building understanding, 1,000 years building trust." She put her hand on the younger woman's shoulder. "Humanity has learned to be patient. That is our greatest gift, and we will share it with the galaxy." The lights of Nexus Prime continued to glow, a beacon in the darkness. And in the great council chamber, the Horizon Accords were already changing everything. The weak were protected, the strong were responsible, and humanity, the species that had once been dismissed as worthless, stood at the center of it all. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as something far more important. As hope. The council had thought silence meant weakness. They had learned otherwise, and the galaxy would never be the same again.